When Ryan's when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind to Raw with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the Mic.
Hello everybody, it's Rewind to Raw. I'm John Pollock along with Wai Ting. The best time to find out that you're not recording is in the first 5 seconds, not the last 5 seconds. How are you, Wai?
Oh, well, thank goodness for that. You know?
I would have been pissed if I had to rely on your backup.
Well, I have a feeling this is going to be the best podcast we've ever done. So we need crystal clear first run audio.
That is the only option that we have for tonight's show. The very best for all of you as we go through tonight's episode of Raw following Hell in a Cell, a very busy weekend. We're going to get into some of the fallout of all that, but how is your Monday going?
It's going okay, yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's just the weather. We've been on basically like a stretch of like rainy days, and it's just kind of
cold as hell now.
Yeah, it's really zapped my energy, so I've just been kind of lethargic all day. So that's how I'm doing.
Yeah. Below 700?
On the scale of 1,000, yeah, perhaps. My energy level was maybe like a 512.
Yeah, I was sub 500 today.
Sub 500, wow.
Oh, yeah. It was just one of those days, just dragged. Well, what's not going to be dragging is our schedule this week. We've got a lot of stuff coming your way. Beginning Tuesday, we've got an interview coming your way with Jake Hager, who's going to be fighting on Thursday night against Brandon Colton.
Yeah, Bellator.
He is, for some reason, Jake Hager is fighting on the prelims on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Very strange choice. When you look at, they've got a really quality main event with Gegard Mousasi fighting Douglas Lima, but it's a 3-fight main card on CBS Sports Network, and then they've got like their marathon number of fights on the prelims, which is on like their YouTube channel, and that's where Jake Hager is fighting. He is fighting a 40-year-old who made his pro debut back in June. So I think Jake Hager is a sizable favorite in this fight on Thursday night.
Very interesting. Have you done the interview yet, or are you doing it tomorrow?
It's already been done, yes.
Oh, okay.
Did you want me to ask him something for you?
No.
Oh.
I was just curious.
Well, that's coming up on Tuesday. Then Tuesday night, Wai and I will be chatting King of the Ring 1995. We have not done this show yet, so God knows what we're in store for.
You warned me, John, to really take my time with this one, and I can understand why. I spent a good chunk of the day going through it. I'm only halfway through. It is a fucking terrible, terrible show.
Like, it puts into perspective. Like, was last week's Raw terrible? Yes. But it was a terrible in that, my God, there's so much to talk about from this show. King of the Ring 95 is like, okay, it's Savio Vega again, and a man's foot is about to be like, he's like contracted like gangrene because I'm going to outsmart Brett. I'm going to destroy my foot for a month. And then it culminates the tag match of all tag matches to headline this thing. It's a brutal show, and we're going to go through it, and it's not going to be good, but that's on Tuesday night.
The Kiss My Foot match is an exception. I mean, that is one I'm actually looking forward to seeing. I'm not there on the show yet, so that might be my saving grace. But the rest of this, I mean, no saliva. I don't know. Sorry, a King of the Ring tournament that just has matches that really not that interesting. So we'll try our best to talk about it to make it interesting.
Yep, we got Peak Doc Hendricks on color commentary for the whole night with Vince McMahon.
Oh, of course. Yes.
All of that is coming your way.
Stephanie Wyand,
yes. Our intrepid reporter. Then later in the week, we are going to have Brandon Thurston returning on Friday because Thursday night, you know what that means? It's WWE and their third quarter earnings report and investors call. So
already,
who better It's already the third quarter is done, Way.
Wow.
So it's time to put out the Brandon signal, and he will be joining us at Post Wrestling with his zip up jacket, and he will be chatting with us on Friday about all of the news coming out of that call and the earnings report. An interesting earnings report, as they all are, because this is one where, this will reflect where, like, what were those savings from all the cuts back in the spring, because for the main roster cuts, they all had the 90-day no-compete clauses, and this quarter would reflect with those cuts reflected and all of the no-compete clauses off the books. On top of that, how much was all the Thunderdome spending adding to WWE's expenditures in the quarter? So I'm sure like there will be some interesting looks into everything. They've been heavily pushing this free tier of the WWE network. And, based on the last earnings call it seemed like pushing people to that free tier, they saw some success combined with the pandemic starting, because that network number was a lot better than people assumed for the post-Mania quarter.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some of those numbers, hopefully a bit more clarity as to the current state of the company. Are you expecting good news for them, bad news? Do you expect any maybe a bit sort of harder questions, especially with maybe in light of a lot of the conversation about what do they call them, independent contractor statuses?
I guess that is interesting, because I thought you were going to bring up the COVID stuff. I'm not expecting this to be a heavy call when it comes to kind of the safety procedures and protocols. That's not typically the topics you get. But given how outspoken Andrew Yang has been, and with the election just days away, that's a real interesting topic to see how much that is brought up and how much they quickly steer the conversation to we're not going to talk about theoretical outcomes to an election that has not happened yet.
I'm certainly curious to see the line of questioning on this one, because it seems like as of recently, some of the questions have been a bit more hard hitting from the investors. So I look forward to hearing your breakdown with Brandon, as well as listening to the call itself.
Well, we will have Rewind to SmackDown Friday night at 10:15 Eastern. We had a ton of calls on Friday, so those shows on Friday nights, always a lot of fun. And then into the weekend we go. Halloween, what better way than we have a double bill. We have a pair of movie reviews. The Rocky Maivia Picture Show returns. Nate Milton will be joined by Jen Chittenden as they will be reviewing the 2014 classic Hercules, starring Dwayne Johnson, who, I don't know, lost a fight today in a gym because he was... Did you see this video from Dwayne Johnson today?
No, I didn't. What happened?
Holy Christ. This guy, he just posted a video. His eye was all cut up, leaking blood, and then he just wipes the blood with his finger and sucks in the blood.
And this was real? This is not a movie scene?
No, this looked legit.
Well, then, of course, the guy's ready for WrestleMania. Come on. He's not going to get more hurt than that.
I don't know if he can do color, though, but that's coming up on Saturday. And then Halloween is Saturday, and that means Braden and Davey will have an Up Next movie review, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Oh, my. Halloween 3. I've not seen any of the Halloween movies. I'm not a scary movie fan, but these two clearly are. And what a better way to follow up on Up Next Halloween Havoc special. Aren't they doing a whole Halloween party on Zoom?
They are having, they're doing their watch along, and you can join their watch along, but you have to be in costume. And I'm excited to see these two in costume. They've kind of teased some ideas. I'm curious to see what the final decisions are.
Will you be joining in with your costume, John?
I won't be, because I'll be watching Dynamite.
I heard a rumor that you once dressed up as a computer.
Where did you hear this?
From you, actually.
I may or may not have dressed up as a computer in grade 2. And I may or may not have won a contest for best costume that particular year at my school in my age group.
Maybe a story for another time.
Maybe another podcast. And then the week ends off with the long and winding Royal Road. And it's been a long and winding road for WH Park back to Canada, as he will be chatting with Davey Portman this Sunday, and they are going back 17 years to review Kenta Kobashi and Dr. Death Steve Williams from August of 1993. So some great shows this week at postwrestling.com and postwrestlingcafe.com.
As always, a very busy schedule, and we thank all of the contributors. Hopefully you enjoy all the shows.
News to get into. We had the SmackDown number from FS1 on Friday night, courtesy of Showbuzz Daily. They did 881,000 viewers and a .25 in the demo. This was going against the World Series that just did over 8.1 million viewers. So SmackDown was 15th for the night on cable. They were not all that different from last year's SmackDown on FS1, which did 888,000 viewers. So it was a very minor difference from last year. But what was interesting was the comparison to AEW on Wednesday night. And yes, it's not a direct comparison in that AEW was on their regular night in their regular slot, but I thought it was still interesting to look at both in terms of they each had to go against the World Series. And in the key demos, I mean, SmackDown only won 2 of them, which was adults over 50, and they won males 12 to 34. But in the major demos, 18 to 49, it was Dynamite with a .30 to a .25, and males 18 to 34, AEW edged them out 0.15 to .13. And another note to this is that when we saw NXT and Dynamite have to move different nights, those shows held up much better than SmackDown did. And in the case of NXT, did significantly better without the Wednesday night competition. But I guess this is more so interesting if you look at the fact that if SmackDown ever did end up on cable, or if you're just looking at, what Fox is paying SmackDown versus TNT is paying for Dynamite, this was a very interesting head-to-head comparison to look at in terms of, both on cable, both with the same competition from the World Series, and where Dynamite's audience was for a week that we were looking at. Like, this was not a big number for AEW. This was kind of a middle-of-the-road number for them.
Yeah, certainly. I think it adds a bit more fuel to perhaps that, hypothetical now. I mean, no longer are people really comparing AEW to NXT. Now it's AEW compared to either Raw or SmackDown. And a week like this allows maybe a bit more of an even playing field to make that comparison. I still think there's so many variables that you can't really definitively say, hey, if AEW was on Fox, would it do better than SmackDown? There's still so much unproven, like is AEW's audience right now sort of like their core max audience? Would they grow that much if they moved to a network? And conversely, if WWE put that much more promotional power behind an FS1 push, would they be able to do better than this? I think there's just still a lot of variables, but it's interesting. I have to say, I think the number was a lot better than I was expecting, especially when you compare the last time they were on FS1. Just, looking at the amount of people that are watching SmackDown regularly on Fox, that pool is much more smaller to draw from. So I expected far less to make the move over to FS1 this time around. And they pretty much did a very similar number.
What is your theory on, as I mentioned, when AEW moved to, they did a Saturday night show and a Thursday night show, and were able to retain a good amount of their audience. NXT, we saw what they did unopposed and when they had to move to Tuesdays. But SmackDown not being on Fox, do you look at that big drop both years as it's just, that's their difference of not being on network television? What is your theory about, a loyal, every week without fail, they're doing their, 2.1 million viewers that you can count on. Why is such a significant number not just, it's the same time slot, it's just a different channel?
Yeah, personally, I think that's probably your most hardcore wrestling fan who you might even see a level of crossover between, somebody watching SmackDown on FS1 and somebody who might regularly watch an NXT or AEW. To me, that I would assume that might just be your hardcore base that's willing to, and that is aware of these moves at the last minute, that would watch probably wrestling on most channels that it moves to. That's my presumption, and the rest, 1 point something million, perhaps just casual Fox viewers.
Yeah, it also to me really does emphasize like NXT's role in all of this, because these AEW numbers that we're comparing with, that's with a head-to-head wrestling competitor on Wednesday nights.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you don't have NXT there, and like these would be the discussions people would be having a lot more, is looking at AEW's more inflated numbers without NXT competition and how close they are to their other cable competitor, and that would be Raw. Like, I think we're seeing much clearer where NXT is, what function it serves beyond just head-to-head competition of what it plays in a larger sense for AEW.
I mean, the trends are kind of moving in those directions, aren't they? I mean, it's not even necessarily AEW growing, but more so Raw going down. So this time next year will be really interesting to think about. How much closer we get to that discussion. But of course, what ultimately matters is when these deals are up and for negotiation. How Raw's numbers in comparison to AEW will affect them, but more importantly, how AEW in comparison to Raw will affect their negotiating power.
Yeah, there's for Rewind Away on Tuesday night, we always do a segment looking at some of the major news that's going on that week. So going back to June of 1995, there's some astounding information on what Raw was getting, or what WWE was getting paid per week by the USA Network 25 years ago. Spoiler.
How many figures?
Tune in on Tuesday night. The spoiler is it wasn't $5 million a week that they're getting now for Raw. Next up, we have John Elba at Spectrum Sports posted the amended deal between WWE and the city of Orlando. This was the deal to extend their stay at the Amway Center for the Thunderdome with the new expiration date of November 24th, which would be 2 days after the Survivor Series. Dave Meltzer also had a follow-up on this, stating that according to WWE officials, there is no out date. The contract expires with the Raw after Survivor Series, but they are in talks for a longer stay. There are also talks regarding alternative plans. And Dave had this quote, presumably from WWE, stating, "We are evaluating options for Thunderdome's location after our stay at Amway concludes, which the exact date is TBD." Now, on top of this, and John Elba pointed this out, is that the Orlando Solar Bears, Wai's favorite team in the ECHL, they're going to be starting play at the Amway Center on December the 11th. And the bigger factor is that the NBA is currently discussing their return to play, which they're targeting a return date of December 22nd without the bubble, meaning the teams would be back in their home arenas. So it would seem with those two factors that whatever the final date is, WWE is likely going to be looking for an alternative location. And I mean, I've heard of some cities thrown out, but it doesn't sound like there's anything concrete now of what the plans are going to be. But given, hockey and basketball likely being occupants at the Amway Center, it does look like WWE will be moving. And I guess the question is, will they be getting out of Florida, where it seems like it's not going to, the restrictions are not there, but I mean, what are your options when you have, a place like the Thunderdome that you can't just put that into a warehouse or something? Like, you need to have a certain standard of arena that you're going to be housed in.
Yeah, it's true. Does this, push ahead perhaps plans of traveling at least within the Florida Loop, or perhaps they will maybe temporarily move to the Capitol Wrestling Center, the Performance Center, moving back to that. That's a setup, but they put so much hype behind the Thunderdome. For I think as much as they put into this upgraded Performance Center to make it the Capitol Wrestling Center, it in some ways would still seem like a bit of a downgrade. They're promoting so much of this Thunderdome deal that, do you think that they would travel with it, like the same setup but just in a different arena?
I do think so. I'd be very surprised to see them have, like, obviously the Performance Center would be the last resort, that you always have that in your back pocket. But I mean, like the Thunderdome has had a meaningful difference on television viewership. Like I don't, and what they've invested in this thing is probably enormous. So I can't see them shelving the Thunderdome, nor do I see them ultimately, like, maybe you have to leave the state, maybe you can stay in Florida, but I think you will find a place that you can run it. I'd be curious too about like other arenas, whether they be in Florida or outside of Florida, that have been empty, not having any business, that maybe they would want to actively court the WWE to come to our arena because we've got nothing going on. Why not invite the WWE and at least have, I mean, it's not like you can invite fans in or even have necessarily like a full workforce there, but there's some arenas that maybe they just like the idea of being the home of WWE for an extended stay.
Sure. But who's to say it even needs to be a proper arena? Like it could be a large empty warehouse anywhere. I think you could fit that set in.
Well, I guess that gets down to the logistics of like this Thunderdome, like those screens, like it's a pretty enormous setup when you look at it. I don't know what size of arena you would need, but I would like, you couldn't do this in the Performance Center at this scale.
No, you couldn't. No, it would have to be a bigger place.
Mm-hmm. No. I want to see all those thumbs down. I can't be cutting down on screens. I want to see every single one of them. So I guess we will see where this ultimately goes. And if this is brought up on, like, maybe they will announce like the success of the Thunderdome and people wanting to know like long-term plans of the Thunderdome post November 24th, what the plans are. And maybe they will have something more concrete by Thursday's call. AAA, they held a press conference on Monday and they have tentative plans for TripleMania, which did not happen this past summer, that they want to have take place in December, although they have not listed a date. It's really going to depend on how Mexico City is dealing with the pandemic at that point, if they can go forward with this. They have announced Kenny Omega versus Laredo Kid for the show, as well as a hair versus hair match with Pagano and Chessman, and an interesting tie-in with AAA working with Marvel. Marvel has just released this whole series of Funko Pops with a Lucha Libre theme, and what they're going to be doing is taking some AAA wrestlers and they will be playing these Funko Pop characters, and they're going to do a tag match on TripleMania. So we have a AAA Marvel working relationship.
Seems pretty cool. I mean, wrestling and comic books, of course, go naturally together very well, but to have a proper working relationship between a wrestling promotion and the company is really interesting. I wouldn't have expected it to be AAA, but when you think about the Lucha tie-in and what Marvel's doing right now, makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, if I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I'm going to dislocate my shoulder to do so here, that here we do the whole run of Marvel films, and we get deals like this. And from Drew McIntyre to King of the Ring 95, dude, in the last month, I've never heard so many Rocky references on pro wrestling programming.
Outside of Drew McIntyre, what else has there been?
Have you watched King of the Ring 95?
Oh, okay.
Oh, my God. We've got cutaways to
Philadelphia.
The statue. Right. There have been more, too, that I have noticed. Maybe it's just I'm more aware now of the amount of Rocky references that we get in modern day pop culture, but I don't know. It just seems I'm going to take all the credit for it.
They're all patrons, clearly.
Must be. As well, AAA noting that at TripleMania, they'll be inducting La Parka into their Hall of Fame, and they're not going to run this show unless they can have fans, because for their business, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. They're so reliant on that live gate. So this really sounded like a press conference of fingers crossed, these are our plans, date to be determined, hoping for December. And kind of teasing a lot of things, but I mean, again, I don't know how you can possibly predict where things are going to be 2 weeks from now, much less 2 months from now. And we know in Mexico, like it's been hit a lot.
It's really tough to be a promotion when you don't know if you can really promote the thing that you want to promote. At the same time, you can't really wait for some of these things to talk about for the last minute. So, card subject to change, card subject to not exist, I guess.
Card subject, period.
Yes.
Just a few notes from the UFC 254 card on Saturday night. The big news was Khabib Nurmagomedov announcing his retirement after beating Justin Gaethje. Did you happen to see this fight?
Did not, but I heard all about it.
So Javier Mendez, his coach, spoke to Kevin Iole at Yahoo Sports, and he talked about, this was after the fight, of what a disastrous camp this was. So Khabib arrived in San Jose around September 11th, and he had the mumps. So that delayed his camp by about 2 weeks. He comes back, and then he breaks his toe. But he tells Javier Mendez, my toe is broken, but my mind is not. And then there were others in the camp falling ill. They had staph infection going around. It just sounds like this was the camp from hell. But Khabib was bound and determined to do this fight. And, afterwards, it seemed like he had kept this very close to the vest. Javier Mendez didn't know he was going to retire. Daniel Cormier, who was ringside, didn't know. Khabib announced that he was retiring. He wasn't going to go for 30-0. He was going to retire after 29 fights, and said he promised his mother at the beginning of this fight camp that with his father, who passed away in July, he was not going to continue this without his father, and was walking away. And I think everyone believes this to be not to be any kind of negotiating tool. Like, this is pretty concrete as far as fighter retirements go. And then the wildest story way. Daniel Cormier was on with Ariel Helwani today and explained that the closing sequence sees Khabib get this beautiful takedown on Justin Gaethje, and he's going for this armbar, and then he has a slick transition to a triangle before he gets the submission. And he explained afterwards that earlier in the week, he had heard Justin Gaethje say that he would not tap. So when Khabib got the armbar, what's going through his head, with all of this stuff going on, he's thinking, Justin Gaethje's parents are special guests here in the front row watching this. If Justin won't tap, I don't want his parents to see him, break an arm or something. So he transitioned to the triangle, knowing if Justin refused to tap, he would just go unconscious, but he wouldn't break a body part.
How considerate.
Justin still tapped, but I mean, what an honorable way to beat a man in front of his parents.
That is about the sweetest, most violent thing I've ever heard. That's a wonderful story. Just a way to add that much more to, I think, what seems to be incredibly emotional, final moments of this man's career. But yeah, like
the post fight was one of the most emotional scenes you will ever see in a fight setting. Like, Khabib is just broken down. Like, it was like the weight of the world, just like all the reality of his father passing. It seemed like it all just hit him the second this fight ended. It was a very emotional scene after the fight, and a very classy ending with Justin Gaethje going over to console him, and it was a really great scene at the end of this all. And I think most are very, very convinced that Khabib will be the exception to the rule of fighter retirements that stick even at 32 years of age. I do feel we've seen his last fight.
What does he do after?
What will he do after? I mean, he's stated that, he will continue to coach his teammates and stuff like that. He's involved, he's got several foundations and things that he started. And I mean, this guy will never have to think about money again in his life. I mean, he has made I was really thinking about this today, is that I don't know how many fighters are walking away from more guaranteed money than Khabib, where George St. Pierre seemed very willing to fight this guy, and Conor McGregor, this was the fight that he was obsessed with getting. Those two fights are forget life-altering money. That's generational wealth that, I mean, his grandchildren would be more than taken care of. You know what I mean? It's just enormous money that I don't know how many fighters, no matter what beliefs they had or plans of retirement that they had, that would be able to walk away from one of those fights, much less two. That, I mean, he very easily, I think, could have gotten either of those fights. And the Conor one, I mean, it's been sitting there, and he repeatedly said this was not about money. He beat him, and he is not going to give Conor McGregor that rematch.
Wow. Oh, very interesting. I mean, obviously, like, with circumstances, I mean, those feelings seem to be even more cemented. But out of respect to somebody who, places other things ahead of money.
Last thing is just looking at Wednesday night's lineups. There are some changes to Dynamite. The main one being Rey Fenix is off, and this show was taped on Thursday. So it will now be Kenny Omega against Penta in the semifinals, and the other side of the bracket is Hangman Page versus Wardlow, the two winners meeting at Full Gear. Cody against Orange Cassidy in a lumberjack match for the TNT title. And there was an injury to Abaddon during her match with Ty Conti, so that match is off. The report was that she took an elbow to the throat and was having trouble breathing and had to go to the hospital for evaluation. So the match was halted, so that will not air, and in its place will be Eddie Kingston against Matt Sydal, and then you've got the Town Hall with the Inner Circle that will probably be one of the big segments of the night.
Definitely looking forward to Abaddon. I mean, it seemed like by that sort of booking that it might have been a push for her, or at least the start of one. So I'm sure something like this won't have any bearing on whether or not she does get a push in the future. But it'll probably just delay it. But nonetheless, looking forward to seeing an actual run from her soon.
And then the Halloween Havoc special has Rhea Ripley against Raquel Gonzalez. The Dexter Lumis, Cameron Grimes Haunted House of Terror match. And then we have the spin the wheel, make the deal provisions for the two title matches with Damian Priest against Johnny Gargano for the North American title and Io Shirai versus Candice LeRae for the women's title. So I think certainly a lot of interest in the Halloween Havoc concept. I'm not expecting NXT to threaten AEW overall, but this is a Halloween Havoc show where I would say, it's a fine lineup, but I think it's the nostalgia more than anything that might draw some people in that want to check this out of pure nostalgia.
Yeah, if a show like this had come along maybe a year ago, I feel like it would have perhaps fared better. But now I think everybody's kind of settled on the rosters and the product that they've gotten used to on a Wednesday. So I think there's going to be some initial curiosity at the start to see the set, to see the concepts, to see some of those things. Beyond that, I mean, it really is up to the show to be able to maintain that audience. And how long can they really stretch, those nuggets of nostalgia throughout the entire 2 hours?
And probably you don't want to put the last Halloween Havoc from 2000 onto the free tier to promote this.
Probably not. Which one would you put on?
What was the last great Halloween Havoc? There were some really bad ones. 99 had that awful Hogan laying down for Sting deal. I would not recommend that. 98 was not very good either. That had kind of begs the question Hogan why Warrior match.
It kind of begs the question why everybody's so excited for this to return, but it really is in the name, I think.
Well, maybe the monster truck duel between Paul White and Hogan.
Oh, they
Big
better
Show
come
comes
through
back
with
from the dead.
They better come through with some fucking crazy stipulation, like in the spin the wheel thing.
One last news item coming from Andrew Thompson, who just alerted me that President Obari of New Japan just did an interview with Tokyo Sports, and the limit for the Tokyo Dome shows, according to Obari, is going to be 20,000. So that would be 50% capacity at the Tokyo Dome. So that would mean their goal would be 40,000 over 2 nights.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right.
I would say that is ambitious in these times for New Japan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be. How do you don't think they'll do it?
It's going to be contingent on the lineups, and as we saw, for New Japan, I think that the G1 was kind of interesting to see, where I think it's going to take a lot to hit 20,000. I don't think that's just a rubber stamp that you're going to be able to sell 20,000 tickets for both nights as well.
And how comfortable are people currently in Japan to be in a room? I mean, granted, it's a giant room, but still a stadium full of 20,000 people. I wonder.
There's no way to predict. The Jingu Stadium show was their biggest that they've run, and that was 5,000 people.
And it was outdoors.
And outdoors, yes. Yeah. All right, into Raw we go. And, tonight's show, there were several objectives to the show, the biggest being the Survivor Series. And I've got to say that they have pretty much outlined the entire card, unless you're expecting any title changes from now until the pay-per-view, which I guess are always possible. But the sidebar to that is no NXT this year. It will be straight Raw versus SmackDown for the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I'd say that was a big news coming out of this show. No NXT involvement. And if you perhaps, I don't know, maybe watch the show for the better part of several months, I mean, very little mention, I think, made of NXT on that level. No real teases at all. I mean, they also have a lot of people that they just recently called up. So, but yeah, interesting creative decision. I mean, I thought it worked out really well last year, especially as a way to promote NXT on Wednesday, to lift them up. This year, choosing not to give them that promotion power.
Yeah, I wonder if any of the thinking was at all about like the mixing of the locker rooms and not like after that most recent outbreak and the fact that, Raw Underground has been shelved, like maybe the idea of like maybe that wasn't the deciding factor, but maybe that contributed to the decision.
I'm sure it would have a huge impact on that thinking. Yeah, even like shelving something like Raw Underground, why go through all that trouble just to mix the talent?
Like if you get any kind of like outbreak and then suddenly it's like you have all three locker rooms intermingling for 4 weeks leading up to this, I mean, that could just wreak havoc on all your rosters.
Mm-hmm.
Drew McIntyre starts the show. He has no excuses for losing the title, but he promises one day to win it back. And he says, I've been thinking about the movie Rocky and Rocky 4, which is coming out next Tuesday at the Post Wrestling Café. It's not about how hard you hit, it's how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. And when Drew gets knocked down, he comes back twice as strong. And if you could read my mind, you'd be very scared.
I hope these two just go on quoting Rocky 4 for the rest of the build for their program.
Randy, if you can change.
If Drew dies, he dies.
If he Drews. No, that doesn't work. The Miz interrupts with John Morrison. He's got the briefcase. He was absolutely aggravating here. He said that he beat Randy Orton here in Orlando 10 years ago for the title. Maybe he'll do it again. He's just annoying Drew until Drew headbutts Miz. Then Morrison does a Scottish accent. He gets forearmed and thrown around with belly to bellies. But as he goes for a future shock DDT, Miz returns, clipping the knee of Drew. Drew then stomps on Morrison's sunglasses and says, it's going to be a bad night for Miz and Morrison. Friggin' idiots. And that's how this segment ended.
I thought it was a good, post-defeat promo from Drew McIntyre. I mean, so much of whether or not I think you could determine a babyface losing was a good idea is based on their follow-up. And this episode was pretty much entirely dedicated to Drew McIntyre's reaction to losing. So much so that I think you heard more from him than you did from Randy Orton. And this to me just felt like a total, beginning of his road to redemption.
I think this was like the furthest you were going to see a Vince McMahon anointed babyface sell defeat, because that was always a major, to me, a glaring part of when John Cena would, like, they never wanted him to come across as like whining. But at the same time, like, we would have times like this guy would like laugh off stuff like that just because they never wanted him to feel like a crybaby over something.
You didn't get that from Drew here. Drew like pretty much said he has no excuses, but he has one promise, and that's he'll be champion again. So he's not pouting about it, but he is, you could tell, maybe silently angry and upset about it. And certainly by his actions later on, you could tell he's very angry about it. But he's also incredibly determined and still carries that confidence, which I think is very good of a lead babyface.
They laid out the theme of the Survivor Series, Raw versus SmackDown, which will feature 5-on-5 traditional Survivor Series matches, and we'll go through all the card later because they they announced pretty much everything for the show, save for all the participants in the Survivor Series matches. And then we were going to have a bunch of qualifying matches tonight, including, as Samoa Joe labeled him, the barefooted bro wonder versus Sheamus.
God, there were some pretty awful ones. Oh, man.
That might be the worst.
So wait, like Drew, they still called him the Indomitable.
Is he the Scottish psychopath as well?
That might be, one of the other ones. They might have retired that one. But Indomitable, I mean, the guy lost last night.
He was dominated.
He's something else. They've got a bunch of these, they're god-awful. Almost all of them.
The barefooted bro wonder. Oh, my God.
Man.
AJ comes out with Jordan. He is 2-0 on Raw. He asks, why do I have to have a qualifying match? I've proven myself. I should be the captain of Team Raw. And he says his associate doesn't like to be looked at or talked to. And his associate also does not have a name.
Didn't they key him as Jordan last week or the week prior?
They were always keying him as, they were referring to him as Jordan during the Raw Underground things, but I don't know if they have yet with AJ.
I feel like last week they might have as he walked out, but I could be mistaken.
He calls Jeff Hardy the biggest cheater in WWE after using an illegal knee brace this past summer. I do enjoy how AJ always goes back to this loss. Like, I'm fine with that. Like a champion that loses his title and it eats away at him.
It wasn't exactly that long ago either, right? Like it was like
August?
2 months. Yeah.
He did say the summer here. Well, he said his associate will make Jeff Hardy wish that he never put that bottle down.
Damn, like it can't be a coincidence that like in the two promos we've heard back to back about Jeff Hardy, they've both made reference to that. I mean, I know it's a part of his like major storyline from the past 2-3 months, but I mean, he's not doing that program with Sheamus anymore. Like, why are they continuing to bring it up?
Do you think that Elias and Jeff Jarrett are going to be on opposing teams at the Survivor Series? Dude, I was upset about that one last night. I had no idea when we were doing the show last night that Jarrett had posted earlier in the day that it was his 3-year anniversary of being sober. Like, that to me is so low class that they went there. Yeah. And I mean, one can't be a coincidence from the other.
I mean, even if like, I don't know, perhaps Jarrett okayed it, it's still like very insulting, I think, to anybody who's gone through it. It's just a bad look. Why go that low?
How much of your audience is aware of that with Jeff Jarrett? Like, some will be, but this guy isn't a regular character. They don't know about this. I really just thought that was just like the stuff you really hate. And there was plenty of that if you read Jim Ross's latest book of just where they would just go for the jugular on stuff like that. And it's just, it's inexcusable. AJ versus Jeff Hardy. This was our first of 3 qualifying matches for the men's team. Hardy got caught by Jordan on the floor, and we just went to commercial. I didn't know what Jordan did with him. Maybe he just like slowly laid him down on the floor. I don't know what happened here.
That must have been what happened, because I mean, he didn't get attacked. I mean, it's weird. They just like these throw to commercials are just anything unusual happening, they will go to commercial. Whereas like in a real sport, you might have some commentary. Like if a fan runs onto the field streaking or something, like you can say, hey, we have to pause for action while we settle all this. They don't even say that.
What if someone put a spider down your pants and you started having convulsions in the ring? Would that cause a commercial?
Was that what happened to Mia Yim?
I don't know what the fuck happened to Mia Yim, but it was one of the most bizarre things I've seen this year, and that covers a lot of ground. So AJ hits him with the rack bomb, spinning Jeff off his shoulders. Twist of Fate and Pele kick get avoided, and then there's a sit-out gourd buster by Hardy. He climbs the turnbuckle, but then the menacing stare of Jordan locks eyes with Jeff Hardy. It's like staring into an eclipse. And he gets knocked off the top turnbuckle from the distraction and is shoved into the post. Phenomenal forearm, and Styles pins Hardy in 9 minutes, 57 seconds. So AJ qualifies for the men's team.
These two have had, very good, reliable matches on SmackDown in the months past, and this was no different. I thought this was a pretty good TV match. Jeff and Elias would go on to lose, so that kind of evens them out. I mean, firmly slots them as, I guess, a mid-tier program for sure, but I didn't think the loss really hurt Jeff at all.
They'll have a concert.
Jeff Hardy with Jeff Jarrett.
Oh, okay. Maybe, yeah. With my peroxygen tonight. Elias shows up, bashes Jeff Hardy with a guitar from behind, and they played his song. And throughout the night, they were plugging that Elias's album is out, and he's number 2 on iTunes Music, which would have quite the payoff by the end of the night.
This was its own little storyline.
Yeah, I mean, this was a show-long build with a payoff. R-Truth was with Sarah Schreiber. He's going to go scout the tag match coming up. He eats and sleeps dangerously. In fact, his third middle name is R. Franklin Dangerously Copperpot Truth. And then he stopped and he just goes, ugh, and he walks off. I didn't know if this was like their own like Rhino Heath segment where, I mean, this guy just realized like, this is a stupid promo. I'm just leaving. I didn't know what this was.
I think he just likes to like make funny noises for fun.
I thought they were just like, yep, this is fine. We're going to air it. So, big tag match to come. Lince Dorado, Grand Metalik against Akira Tozawa and Drew Gulak. Truth came out to his own music, ran around. They tried to pin him. It ended with Gulak getting hit with a high cross from Dorado, who missed R-Truth. He pinned Gulak in 207. More pin attempts on the floor, and then R-Truth ran away. They all chased him. This was really novel for this division.
When all 4 of these guys were part of the Cruiserweight Classic, can you imagine that they would end up here?
Yeah, Mascar Dorada. I mean, what a great pickup here. Kira Tozawa, Drew Gulak.
Like the 24/7 division is the 205 division now, plus R-Truth.
Yeah, they might as well put this on 205 Live. Make this the whole show.
I mean, those matches with a 24/7 rule attached to it, maybe I can buy it. But man, it's just like the unfortunate part is that you have this great talent that we've seen have great matches. Granted, nobody watched those matches and nobody ever cared. But it would be nice to at least see, a bit of their ability here rather than just having them do a bit of things and then R-Truth running in here for a comedy bit.
I don't know. If I was Grand Metalik, I would be going to the creative staff or to Vince McMahon, and I just shoot my shot and say, I went to the Olympics too, and just like make up a story. Maybe they'll believe you're an Olympian. God damn, really? You were the Mexican Olympics. Get this guy some TV time. Why is he under a mask?
I mean, why stop there? Why not just go all out and say something that Vince would really love. Like, you used to be,
be like, Vince, you misunderstood. I'm not Grand Metalik. I was Gold Metalik.
Very nice.
It's not worse than what he's doing now. Firefly Funhouse. We had the Mad Tea Party here. Alexa Bliss shows up with tea. The secret ingredient was arsenic as she murdered Ramblin' Rabbit. Bray says, you don't have to hide here. He comforts you and heals you. Alexa becomes possessed, telling us to let him in. Then she snaps back and mentions that she has her interview with Randy Orton tonight, which provides a concerned look on Bray's face as we all had to go back to 2017. Ramblin' Rabbit is okay, and then Bray uses the crucifix.
Ah, that's what it's called. Yes.
The crucifix, yes, which was what Randy Orton used prior to WrestleMania 33 to stab through the soul of Sister Abigail out in the woods.
The crucifix, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so it's back. Well, so that seems to be...
Alexa Bliss is also now playing a 12-year-old.
I guess so. I mean, I think she's really trying to do the Harley Quinn thing. So maybe it might just kind of come across like that. But seems to be the new program that we're building up to after Survivor Series. Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton again, but this time with Bray Wyatt as the Fiend. And this was also our first glimpse at Alexa Bliss within this sort of Firefly Funhouse thing. as usual, I really can't say these segments are like particularly good. This one in particular just kind of made you, want to, like, the intent seemed to be making you feel weird and uncomfortable. Did you get a sense that like they were supposed to be heels or baby faces in this?
I really have no idea what the objective of this is. I think it's going to be very detrimental to Randy Orton. And I hope Drew doesn't have to be part of this too. I really think this is just going to continue that streak of the Fiend working with this group. Like, I feel if we had crowds that this would be baby facing Randy at this point, which is not what I would want to be doing. But I think that would be the side effect of this. Roman Reigns won the lottery by this guy going over to Raw.
Yeah.
This would be death for Reigns if he had to feud with this guy, which would probably be the babyface in waiting for him on SmackDown.
To me, it's a tough program period just because I still feel like the Fiend is such a heel right now, and you have Randy who's also a heel, and so you'd have to turn Randy, I think, in order to make it work. But if it was Drew, I don't know. I'm not really sure how that would go, and again, I'm not really sure that would be beneficial to either of those two. But I mean, the Fiend is a large character. You're gonna have to put him in the title picture somehow. So it's kind of up to them to find a creative way. They have that history with the House of Horrors that they could rely on. So we'll see what type of story they tell.
To rely on, I mean, that to me was like the death of this program. I mean, these two had the bloody match at WrestleMania where Orton came down with the phallic entrance.
That's right. Yes.
This is not a kindly remembered program.
Well, just like how people will remember Halloween Havoc with nostalgic rose-colored glasses, people might have that same feeling for this Bray Wyatt Randy Orton feud. They could do it better this time around, and so I'm still open to it, especially with like Alexa Bliss involved. I think she helps freshen up the entire package, helps her try a new character. But it's still going to be a challenge trying to fit this like Randy Orton character who's been involved in very real storylines this year with Edge, with Drew McIntyre, and trying to fit him into this like, man, kind of like horror movie again.
I will completely do a 180 on this program. If Randy is left in the ring alone, the lights go out, and Bray doesn't realize that Randy's got night vision goggles.
Oh, you have introduced that. Yes.
Oh, God. This is not looking great. Charlie was with Keith Lee. He said there was nothing questionable about what Braun did last week. He could not beat me clean, so he hit me low for the cheap win. Next time, he'll show Braun a real monster. But now, he is going to walk with Elias.
Decent, average scripted promo from Keith Lee here.
Adam Pearce gets confronted by Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. Both women don't feel they need qualifying matches. They've also looked at the number of women on the roster and realized that's not possible. And both want to be the team captain, and they present lists to Pearce to be on their teams. Pearce says to Nia, "You're not the captain," and he'll make a decision tonight on the women's team for Survivor Series. Elias plugs his album. He's interrupted by Keith Lee. Before the match, we got a SmackDown promo for Friday where, because of the loss, Jey Uso now becomes an indentured servant to Roman Reigns and must do Roman's bidding. So it looks like we're going to have the, Jey Uso is now
part of the stipulation, was it?
Well, Paul Heyman did cut a promo to that effect on the kickoff show, but that was really not hammered on the Friday. The Friday was, you're out of the family. That was the stipulation. Then on Sunday, it became this indentured servant deal that seems like Jey will be forced to do the bidding of Roman Reigns against his will.
Okay, so they changed the stipulation, and now Jey is going to be his butler?
Well, it's kind of like contradictory, isn't it? It's like it went from you're out of the family to you're closer to me than ever.
You could still be a servant, I guess, but yeah, he should have his name stripped. He should have, the whole family should have their an OIE card stripped,
Jey is Cinderella now.
Why?
Well, he's like this prince underneath, but unfortunately he's under like the spell And
Oh.
the stepsisters are, the family members that are still tight with Roman, but he's out of the family.
Yeah, they could go on to tell that one. Yeah.
Elias and Keith Lee. Saxton told Tom at one point to stop shilling for this album. Tom, very honest in his response, said, "It's my job." Lee lifted up Elias, spun him around for a slam, which Joe said he took him for a little bit of a tour with that. Elias is climbing up, and Jeff Hardy's music plays, and Elias froze. Maybe this was his acknowledgement that Frozen 2 was on the top 5 of the iTunes music charts. And Lee tossed him off the top, Spirit Bomb, and he won this in 10 minutes.
Okay, match. Nothing very special. I think Lee right now is being positioned as like a good competitive wrestler, but in terms of rank, he's certainly not being pushed on like a monster level of, say, somebody like, a Lars Sullivan. And that could just be the way that they're booking babyface versus heels. But I have to say, like, going competitive like this with Elias and even needing a Jeff Hardy distraction in order to beat him doesn't really place him very high in my mental rankings.
They will have these heels that come up, and it's like they know when they got to get a heel over, like they know the formula to fast track them. They really need to update this formula for baby faces.
Yeah.
It's not like they've created a plethora of them in the last 10 years.
No, they love having even when you have somebody like Keith Lee, who I think is just such a easy, way to promote him up. Like they did it with Survivor Series last year, right?
He was a gigantic, felt like he was not positioned as the number one guy on NXT, but if you had not watched NXT and you just watched the lead up and Survivor Series, you would have felt this was the guy in NXT. That is how he was positioned last year.
Well, we should correct ourselves because, with Drew McIntyre, they do kind of promote him as this very unbeatable babyface.
Oh, Drew, they have hit they have done a tremendous job with Drew. I will not take that away from them, but Randy has, we're talking about the Fiend right now as his challenger. There is nobody ready for Randy Orton.
Roman is who they've got him with for some.
But that's not a program. That's not anything that you're going to be doing anything with. And we'll talk about that later. But Keith Lee qualifies for the team, joining AJ. And then as Elias is recovering, Hardy shows up from behind, blasting him with the guitar and says, "Amen," which they tell you that's a nod to one of Elias's singles on his album that's available now. It's number 2. The Hurt Business bullied some dude who was just trying to go take a piss. They plugged Halloween Havoc. The franchise is back. Not Shane Douglas. Orton is backstage with Charlie. He is not concerned about the Fiend. He's not concerned about anyone. And then we got a whole history of Retribution. What a ride it's been for this 8-man elimination match, which we have been given an hour's notice on that is coming up. It's the culmination, the elimination match between the Hurt Business and Retribution.
It was promoted as the blow-off and no warning ahead of time. I can't really say I'm upset to see it end, but at the same time, man, I was gonna say, I haven't had that much anticipation for it. They could have promoted this a month in advance, and with the way that they ended up booking the team, it just felt like they were. It was better to end it now than later.
The official theme song for Survivor Series is John Ceno's podcast.
Yeah.
Shot in the Dark.
Oh, yes.
Shout out to John Cena. AC/DC.
Oh, yes. Right.
Yeah. You're going to be getting this new album?
I got to listen to the last one first, and then, it's on my queue.
So they announced the first match for the Survivor Series with the U.S. champion versus the IC champion. So if they both hold on to their titles, it will be the sister match of Survivor Series. Bobby Lashley versus Sami Zayn.
Yeah, that classic rivalry.
It's renewed on November 22nd. MVP cuts a promo. He says they don't run. Lashley says, "We don't look at Retribution as a threat. They shouldn't. They're an opportunity. Raw is an asset for the Hurt Business. Retribution is a liability. And MVP says, if you're good at something, you never do it for free. And they want their payment in gold. So what an elimination match.
What does that mean? So they want title matches after doing this?
Yeah, it was like, we don't do anything for free. But then they said they want their payment in gold, which I guess comes with a value attached to it, but not really a monetary figures per se. What these titles, like how much do these titles matter in terms of finances?
I guess it's supposed. Why would anybody want to win a title, right? But maybe some sort of added bonus to your contract. But they weren't very specific about which title they were looking for. Let's try to think. Like it's world title level. That doesn't seem to be like on their radar right now. Like Bobby Lashley is a U.S. champion. They already have like this highest secondary title that you can get. Maybe a 24/7 title shot. Tag team title shot, I suppose.
Well, they do establish that they want to go after the tag titles later. So
there you go.
I guess we'll get a pair of the Hurt Business going for those at some point. Okay, Retribution has a new theme song. Very apropos for the run they're on. Shut it down. Lashley hits a flatliner on T-Bar. He takes him to the corner. Mace gets control of MVP and he yells to his corner, "This is for you, Slapjack." Then we had, what happened here? So, Reckoning, Mia Yim gets onto the apron, and she starts rubbing her arms, and starts yelling, and I'm not kidding, she starts having convulsions on the mat, and MVP is, I will at least defend MVP's reaction here. It's silly that you would stop in your tracks at music playing. This woman looked like she was auditioning for The Exorcist. I can't say that I wouldn't be staring at this, wondering what the hell is going on here. And it was all a ploy as MVP got rolled up. This was among the stupidest things I have seen in a long time.
Oh man, this Retribution thing just keeps getting better and better by the week. Yeah, this week I saw my first ever convulsion, itching, distraction finish to at least an elimination in the middle of a match. And they, again, left you hanging here, not understanding what it was. Even after MVP got eliminated, she kept doing it. And then we just went to commercial. And it was not revealed until we came back. And on a replay, it was revealed she was simply joking. So I guess it was somehow realistic that it was something that you really couldn't take your eyes off of. But, man, even for a wrestling show, it felt really strange.
Strange. You're being kind. So Reckoning's ejected. Lashley speared Slapjack, so he was eliminated. Then Lashley and T-Bar fought all over the Amway Center, so they're counted out. This was just going at a wonderful pace. Cedric and Benjamin are left with Mace and Ali. He was the other one left here. Neuralizer, Pay Dirt, that eliminates Mace, and then Ali ends up drop kicking Benjamin off the apron. There's a big back body drop, and knee sends Ali to the floor, and then Ali grabs a chair to attack Alexander. So this is our new fun finish to do, a DQ with a chair shot on the floor. 13:09, waste of my time. I hate this group of Retribution.
So after this, though, the Hurt Business come out, and they actually, they're so nice to Cedric. They're like, "You did good, man. You did great." They're like,
and then Ali runs. He runs to escape.
Yeah, so they're treating this as if their goal is accomplished now. Like WWE at this point, their mission is done, and WWE owes them. I guess they beat Ali with the DQ, and that was that. So this feud, thankfully, is over. It's done very few favors. I mean, I guess it's kind of helped the Hurt Business, but it's absolutely killed Retribution. And I don't know what you do with Retribution after this.
They're not done. They're not done yet.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Man, this feud might keep going on. Well, okay. Yeah, this was another week where, again, not as much of a surprise this week because we've seen previous weeks now. But this is a team that they're not taken seriously whatsoever.
At least they've been consistent. Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke are chatting with the flirtatious Angel Garza, and Mandy informs him that, yes, me and Otis, we are still close.
Not She didn't say together. She said still close.
I was going to say, like, if Otis was watching this, like, we are still close? Excuse me? That is not, like, that's like when they ask, are you going to be firing the coach at the end of the season? And instead of, like, a denial, it's, he will be our coach as long as he's under contract. Well, the contract's up in 2 months. Are you going to be renewing him? He is our coach as long as he is under contract.
This was a clear, let's just be friends type of breakup, I think.
Where was Tucker tonight?
Probably going to be showing up on SmackDown. That's my guess.
I think that's going to be the split that we're just going to conveniently avoid and ignore.
Perhaps, yeah.
Nia and Shayna Baszler show up, and Jax takes the rose from Angel Garza, so they're hinting at something between those two. Dana says, we have not been beaten yet. What I loved about this is that Dana and Mandy are the baby faces touting the fact that they are 2-0, whereas AJ is 2-0, and it's a heel line that he should be given special, he should automatically get onto the Raw team because he's 2-0, and then Dana and Mandy are justified in saying, we're 2-0. This should be our team. And they're automatically on it because they're 2-0.
Well, there's bias in everything you hear, isn't there? So
I'd be pissed if I was AJ. I was like, no offense, but I mean, AJ Styles and Dana Brooke. Compare.
Yeah.
Jax asks, is this punked or something? Are you joking? So, a minimal Phil Brooks reference on his birthday.
Okay, close enough.
How long has Punk been off the air for?
Oh man, I gotta think. 2003, something like that.
2003? That long ago?
How long do you think?
Oh God, I would think it. I think it was still going around 10 years ago. Let's see.
Really?
I could be quit.
2007.
Right, Punk. It first aired in 03. It ended in 07. Wow, that short of a run. Well, there you go. Moving on. Drew McIntyre and The Miz. This, to me, is a look into the next 6 months for The Miz.
I guess there was a revival at some point, or went until 2015.
Oh.
So,
okay.
Never mind.
But the Ashton Kutcher version was 07 it ended.
I think so. And I think even, what is it? There might be a version that's out right now.
Well, Chance the Rapper
on Quibi.
Is doing one on Quibi. So I don't know about that. Quibi is the retribution of the streaming world.
Yes, right.
Miz attacks Drew's right knee and then sends him into the post by the ribs. Drew does his big comeback, does a kip up onto the bad knee. The Future Shock gets countered. Drew's sent to the floor. He beats the shit out of John Morrison, launches the briefcase away, and then kicks out of a cradle. Claymore pins the Miz. And unfortunately, I feel this is always where we find most times the heel briefcase owner is, well, they have the briefcase. We can now beat them like a drum. And that was the case that I certainly saw here with The Miz. That they feel they can just destroy this guy as long as he's got this briefcase.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's just how they build their Money in the Bank winners, unfortunately. And with The Miz, like, I think he's fun with the briefcase, especially with him and Morrison just kind of teasing heels, always having that weapon in their corner, always having that threat. As a guy talking with the briefcase, I think he's great, but he's not somebody with any sort of credibility. I mean, far less credibility this time around than he had the first time he had the briefcase. So, I mean, I really just look at the Money in the Bank as almost just an entertainment gimmick. At the very least, it's better than Otis, but it's hard for me to buy him as a serious threat, and it doesn't seem like they're making any attempts at changing that.
Then we had the closest thing to a modern day version of Sean Mooney at the Survivor Series event center. Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods are in the back wearing Street Profits shirts, and Kofi is like kind of nodding off, and it's done as like a dig at Angelo Dawkins. Woods is wearing a Burger King crown. so he can face King Corbin. But Woods is informed that no, we are facing the Street Profits at Survivor Series. Asuka shows up to announce that we want the smoke. And they announce you will be facing Sasha Banks at Survivor Series. And then they go over the other matches of Randy Orton versus Roman Reigns, which I think is a really tricky match to put together.
These are always tricky matches. I mean, neither champion can really afford a loss. So not really expecting clean finish.
Probably going to get like Fiend bullshit in that match.
Perhaps, yeah. So
it's just a very difficult, but like to me, it's like Orton, you know, he's definitely lost some steam, but he's still like your top heel on Raw. Reigns, you really don't want to screw with this. Like it's a very, very, very tricky match of putting this thing together.
These are all, they're often tricky, but I think it's just about the spectacle of seeing the two top stars from the two shows facing each other. And, maybe something like this might explain why they didn't want to have Drew with the championship either.
No, I think that's one fresh match that they want to save in Drew and Reigns at a date down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much by the end of this, we have the Hurt Business come in to confirm Lashley taking on Zayn. And then we've got the men's 5-on-5 and the women's 5-on-5. So by the end of the night, like we've got 6 matches official and we'd get the whole women's team. And we've got 3 of the 5 members of the men's team as well. So they announced quite a lot tonight for Survivor Series.
Some of these matches are pretty self-explanatory, right? You know, one champion faces his equivalent, his or her equivalent on the other show. All that's left is to really fill the roles on the teams, and they seem to have done that right away. So, yeah, we'll see what the 3 weeks that they have, what they do with it.
We've got, in every case, it's either babyface versus babyface or heel versus heel. Do you expect any title changes over this period? They're definitely teasing it with the Hurt Business going after Kingston and Woods tag titles that they set up here in the promo.
It's definitely possible, but at the same time, I mean, that to me is a match that I actually do want to see. You know, New Day versus Street Profits, and you know, of course they might not be afraid to change a match in the middle by changing a belt, but I don't know. In some of these cases, I feel like it would be a downgrade to get rid of some of these matches because on paper, those two Street Profits versus New Day, Asuka versus Sasha, like they look really good to me. Even Orton versus Reigns, I think, is very attractive on paper. So I have a feeling they're going to keep those ones.
MVP. They do this, and then it ends with Asuka doing the New Day Rocks chant. Drew's backstage. He guarantees Orton will have a moment tonight, but it won't be a moment of bliss. Adam Pearce and Pat Buck introduce the women's team for the Survivor Series. They bring out Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, Dana Brooke, and Mandy Rose. And then the 5th member is going to be the winner of a fatal 4-way with Lana, Lacey Evans, Peyton Royce, and the returning Nikki Cross. So that match begins. And Tom Phillips notes that Elias's album has now surpassed Hamilton. It's #1 on the Apple Music charts.
Very impressive. Wow, it's better than Hamilton. Huge.
That's the conclusion.
Tonight, at least.
Yes. Lana went to hop over the top rope, and she nearly wiped out here, catching her feet on the top rope, and then walked into a woman's right. Peyton Royce was delivering spin kicks all over the place, hit a gory bomb to Lacey on top of Nikki Cross. You can see she's definitely getting creative with her offense. And then there's like a Tower of Doom spot, but it's Peyton delivering a German to Lacey off the second turnbuckle, who delivers a superplex to Cross. Lana's selling the woman's right on the floor and runs in to get the cover on the fallen Nikki Cross at 8:06. So Lana wins the 5th spot. And then she runs up to hug Nia Jax, who holds on to her and then puts her through the desk for the 6th time.
Yeah, at this point, you start to definitely feel bad for Lana, and maybe that's the intent. You know, maybe this is their way of making Lana into a new babyface. Considering that they're continuing with this Lana thing, it doesn't seem like it was blown off last week, and that they It has to end with Lana somehow costing Nia Jax some sort of victory, probably at the Survivor Series or maybe even the tag titles, right?
Or maybe Lana puts someone through the desk on her own on the SmackDown team.
Nia Jax?
I don't think she can get Nia Jax up for a Samoan drop.
Sure, they can figure it out.
Retribution is not dead yet. Oh, sorry. First, we had the Orton promo. He's still planning to be on Moment of Bliss. He heard what Bray and Alexa said. And Charlie said, there's a threat coming for you. You could be walking into the lion's den. And he says he is not afraid of the Fiend. He's happy to introduce him to an RKO. Retribution. They note they are not a family. They're not a team. This is a mission. And we are willing to sacrifice anything for it, including our careers. We win when you suffer, and we will win because we decide when you can shut down.
Huh?
I didn't know what this meant.
You will win when we decide to shut down. Got it. Okay. But they just won.
No, they lost.
No. Hurt Business won.
Oh, Hurt Business won, yes.
So did they decide to shut down?
Well, they decide. They decide when it's over.
Yeah, it's like the it's like the team that you just keep beating and beating, and then they just said, no, that doesn't count. That doesn't count. No, this one's for real.
It's awful. It's a very terrible, terrible storyline. And hopefully this does not destroy these performers moving forward when they have to move on from this wretched gimmick. Matt Riddle and Sheamus, our final qualifier of the night. They had a really good match. Riddle was going for an armbar and then thought to himself, you know what? Sheamus's parents might be on the screens watching, and I know Sheamus won't tap. So he transitioned to the triangle instead of the armbar. And Sheamus did what Justin Gaethje couldn't, and he escaped from the triangle.
He's better than Justin Gaethje, clearly.
That was what I was taking from this. Sheamus goes for a Kimura. It's broken with a gut-wrench suplex. And then Riddle's trying for the Kimura. It's broken with an Irish curse. And he hits a PK off the apron and flips off the middle rope. They go through the break. No one was like itching and scratching themselves. It was a natural commercial break. Riddle landed a head kick, Broton, and then Sheamus came back, and dude, he nailed Riddle with this knee strike to the head. Riddle comes back with an exploder, floating bro onto the knees. And Tom says, this is like Rocky beating up a piece of meat. Riddle goes to his back with a rear naked choke, gets thrown off, then sidesteps the bro kick, bridging German for 2, and then Riddle's back gives out, and it allows Sheamus to hit the bro kick, pinning Riddle in 12 minutes and 51 seconds.
It was a very physical, very intense matchup. I quite enjoyed it.
This was the best match on the show.
Yeah, very good, hard-hitting chemistry. Good selling from Riddle, I thought, throughout. So these two, like, we're good together. It was not a match with any sort of, like, I don't know, that much interest attached to it. Certainly, like, the characters don't have that much going on right now. But as just a physical match on Raw, I thought this delivered.
I don't understand the thinking of, you've brought this guy up. He was already floundering on SmackDown. You give him the big reset going to Raw. And it's like, our option here was, nothing against the guy. Sheamus is 42. He's been on WWE TV for 12 years. It's like he has reached where he's going to get. Who is the guy that has the ability to ascend higher? Like, where are we going with Matt Riddle? And I think they believe that, when we're ready, we can snap our fingers and he'll be ready. That is proven to be not the case many, many times over. So I just look at the outcome here that, yes, this was a great match. I'm not saying Matt Riddle is like dead, but he's just in a role where we have so many people at this level that it just, I just look at the reintroduction process on Raw. Like, it's kind of been set, like where this guy is. He's right where he was on SmackDown a month ago.
Well, you never know, like, what else is going on, like with what they're booking, right? Like what I don't know what sort of bullshit might be happening. Did you catch like a line here from like Tom Phillips, or was it Byron, who said like it's no secret Matt Riddle has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way backstage? Did you hear that?
I missed that line.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I heard that. But I don't know if they're turning that into a story or what. But yeah, I'm really not sure what they're doing with Riddle.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's no secret all the stuff that's going on with him, but they've kept him on TV throughout this whole process. And I don't know if it's like we don't want to go all the way with this guy or what. But it just seems to be that they have him slotted at a certain level. And I mean, listen, if they had their issues, they wouldn't put him on TV. So I don't know. I think he's in a very just this period where I don't know if they just see him at a certain level or what's going on. The final segment was Moment of Bliss, and she brings out Randy Orton and promises Randy, I won't bite. She asks Orton about him and Drew burning down the house last night, and Randy says, there it is, burning the house down. So he knows that they've remembered this awful story from 2017. Where is the Fiend? And Drew comes out. They fight as Bliss is laughing in the corner. 5,000 camera cuts later, Drew McIntyre tosses the set pieces to the floor and goes to set up for the Claymore when the lights go out. And the red light comes on. Orton is on the ramp. Drew's alone in the ring. And Orton has this frightened look on his face. The last way I would want to script Randy Orton. And he looks behind, and there is the Fiend. And Randy walks forward, away from the Fiend. He would rather just get attacked by Drew, who is more than happy to beat the hell out of Orton. So they fight around the ring. They fight onto the desk. And then the show ended.
Yeah. Randy's got a lot of programs going on right now. He's got Roman as the pay-per-view opponent. But I guess this Drew Fiend thing is the TV program to really hold him over. And it's definitely like
a challenge.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge anytime you're working with the Fiend. But like it seems like Randy Orton has also taken several roles here. Like on the one hand, I think with the Fiend, is he supposed to be a babyface?
I get the impression that he is. I think that's where they want you to be. It's that like here's a guy that's actually going to mess with Randy Orton, but I watched this.
Or is it he's the heel with the Fiend is the babyface, and then Randy is the heel for both of them.
Like Randy Orton is the adversary of Drew McIntyre, so he's a heel, and I think you're supposed to believe that the Fiend is now the guy that can mess with Randy Orton. But I don't think that is going to be the way people take this. If anything, I think it's going to be I think it's going to lessen Randy Orton as a heel. And I think you're just going to get a mess of a program between these two.
You're going to have to find a way to mesh, Drew McIntyre with the Fiend. Even if the two of them are fighting on the same side. So, it could be interesting. Or it could be terrible.
At the end of this, what do you see as Drew's role at the Survivor Series? Because really the only role is part of the men's team or he's involved in something else.
I think he's in the men's team. He's already qualified, right? Hasn't he?
No, Drew hasn't.
Oh, Drew hasn't? Who did he beat today? He didn't fight anybody.
He beat The Miz, but that was not a qualifier.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. So I'm guessing he'll make his way onto the team somehow.
Well, that was Raw. I mean, I would say the positive. I thought Sheamus and Riddle had a great match. You've outlined a lot of the Survivor Series, so like you have that direction now for the next couple of weeks. So that's a positive.
Yeah.
This Retribution stuff's awful. I'm not enjoying this Fiend stuff with Orton. Those would be the two big negatives. And whatever the hell happened with Mia Yim.
You know, as usual with these Survivor Series, like that's almost like a pay-per-view unto itself, and your Raw is going to be something completely like different. I mean, it's going to be a different show, not necessarily building to those matches, but more so building to the next pay-per-view that's coming up after Survivor Series. So, yeah, you know, they have a card for Survivor Series. I think thus far it looks good, but we're still going to maybe have to, you know, reserve a bit of judgment on the programs currently going on Raw. As an episode itself, maybe I was just like a bit more tired than usual, but this one I definitely felt a drag heading towards the end. Maybe it's just the roster of this current show that I'm not necessarily as excited by, but it's the beginning of like their new season.
Let's go to the forum. Tonight's show gets a 4.86 out of 10. Paul from New Jersey writes, by now, I think it's abundantly clear that Retribution was never meant to get over. They're just a parody and should be viewed as only that. Whose idea was it to give Nia Jax all this mic time? Nice punked reference, Nia. So glad they split the Iconics because this Peyton Royce singles push is going really well. This show was a snooze fest. Don't want to be completely negative, so I will say I like that Dana Brooke is on television and Lana getting the Kenny from South Park treatment is hilarious. With the current product, if you guys didn't do this for a living, how much WWE would you be watching?
I think I would keep up with like things that were happening via websites or podcasts, and I'd probably watch the occasional pay-per-view, but I wouldn't be watching like I might just like flip on Raw, like, cause out of habit, you know, it's a Monday night. Oh, let's see what's going on there. Might be checking Twitter, and if there's something worth watching, I'll watch it. But it wouldn't be appointment viewing for me.
I would say over the last month, I would definitely, I would probably end up watching SmackDown most weeks. I've enjoyed the top two stories on SmackDown with Reigns and with Bayley and Sasha. And to me, if you're getting like two strong programs on that 2-hour show, I think like that carries the show for me.
Yeah, sure. I like if it wasn't on Friday, maybe, but because it's a Friday, I don't think so. I don't think I would. We go to Johnny, who says, what is your assessment of Drew McIntyre's 7th month reign as champion? Do you think he held the stature of the top guy very well? And if so, going forward, can he maintain that? When I say top guy, I mean someone who could fill those top 3 spots at Mania. I think during a year of dissatisfactory booking, he is certainly one where they have got it pretty spot on. Thoughts, John?
I think it's such an incomplete because we don't have the usual ways of what to measure like a success or failure by. I think that Drew, I think is seen as that top guy. Like he is the number one babyface in the company, regardless of brand. So he's in that spot. I think he's done an exceptional job this year where it's been the state that the shows have been running under. But it's not like we get to look at, okay, did house show numbers go up? Did this guy, like, did the audience turn on him? Like all these different factors that we would measure, a champion success by, we don't have. We just kind of have the performance, which is very subjective. Some may, like, if you think Drew is awesome and I think he's awful, it's like we both may have points, but it's down to our opinion. We don't really have those specific markers to look at and can see what major differences he's made. But I think overall, he's been a legitimate babyface that to me has worked. And we do have the period before the shutdown that you could see that from the Rumble onward, like he was getting over. Like by the time they got to that Raw in Brooklyn and he laid out Lesnar, like you had a top babyface on your hands. So I'd like to think that he would have rode that wave. There's always like that post-Mania difficulty sometimes for a new babyface champion, but I don't think you could ask much more out of him this year. Like from match quality, promos, I think that he's checked off the boxes for me.
I think he's, as a performer, very good, and he's really demonstrated over the past several months how good he's been. And it's not just the promo, which we know he's had, but in ring too. Like he just has an intensity and just a level of excitement and just a fluidity to a lot of his wrestling that I think is somewhat underappreciated. But that said, I do really feel like whether or not there's an audience there, I think there's a spark that's just missing from him from being like next level, you know. And when I say next level, I'm talking about people like Becky Lynch, you know, people like obviously Rock and Austin, yeah, maybe even a John Cena, although like it's harder for me to say like what Cena's spark is. But like Drew McIntyre, I think this was a good first run, but he still feels, in my opinion, almost a little bit prototypical, a little bit generic of like what you would imagine Vince McMahon wanting a top babyface to be. And Drew McIntyre is, to me, like, even he's better than Roman Reigns on the microphone. Maybe even better than Roman Reigns, like, you know, in ring. But there's just that spark that like prevents me from like thinking of him as like somebody I have to see. And that's a spark that Roman Reigns has found right now as a heel. So, you know, it's much more challenging, I would say, to find it as a babyface, especially when you're playing, you know, somebody's idea of what a babyface should be rather than finding that yourself, which I don't know if Drew has that much space to, because he's, you know, fulfilling Vince McMahon's ideals right now. But I would say there's still something preventing him from reaching that next level for me.
Aaron from Brampton writes, I actually don't mind the idea of the 24/7 title, but it's time to change up how it's presented on TV. The whole purpose of it is to add some chaotic and random comedy to Raw, yet they're recycling the same old tropes. Give us some superstars that aren't R-Truth or Tozawa. How about a story that's more than just wrestlers attempting schoolboy pins? That title has shown it could be entertaining when Drake Maverick was champion. I hope they explore the relationship between Bray and Alexa a bit more in the coming weeks. They didn't seem to have natural chemistry in the Funhouse. Do you guys think maybe they'll go the direction of them being love interests? I really like how Orton sold his fear of the Fiend in the closing segment as he chose brawling with Drew over confronting Bray.
Yeah, I think you'll maybe get some of those, like, I think they're just purely basing this off of like Joker and Harley Quinn, and you know, it's not necessarily completely overt. They're not making out all the time, but like the kind of suggestion is there that these two are somewhat together, or more so that she is obsessed with him, which is I think what you'll continue to see. And I think Bray will continue, like the Fiend especially, will continue to be sort of this more like, you know, I don't think he'll be doing much like romance with that character. He's just more so somebody who is there to completely hypnotize the people that are around him. And I think that's the character Alexa's going to play. We go to Brian from New Jersey, who says, I found this episode to be a bit of a bore, but at least it wasn't a mess like last week. I thought Sheamus and Matt Riddle had a good match, as Riddle remains on the skids during his ugly lawsuit business. Not a fan of the running gag of Lana being put through a table. This week it just felt mean. They stated that this week's Hurt Business vs. Retribution match had been building for months, a week after they already had a match. I take it the Raw men's team will win their match at Survivor Series because AJ Styles made it onto the team, and everybody on the SmackDown team will be petrified in fear by AJ's big friend. I guess any NXT reps decided to sit out because they went out on top last year.
Yeah, they've retired from the Survivor Series. They've conquered that. Alexander from Portland. I'll eat my hat if there's a gimmick worse than Retribution to come in 2020. Nothing I saw tonight endeared them to me. Congratulations to SmackDown for not drafting them. Maybe I'd be excited for Sasha Banks and Asuka if we didn't already see them have multiple matches earlier this year. Maybe I'd be excited for Randy Orton and Roman Reigns if outside interference was guaranteed to not happen. But I can't see WWE choosing to let one of these Hell in a Cell winners lose at the next pay-per-view. As a side note, I listened to the new Elias EP that came out today. I'd say it's not worth the time, but we're all used to wasting 3 hours every Monday anyways. At least this show was better than King of the Ring 95. 5 awkward seizures out of 10.
Oh, man. Well,
what a review of that album.
And what a review of King of the Ring 1995, which I still have half to watch. So,
I don't envy you.
Oh, I might have to save that for tomorrow morning.
Well, tomorrow morning, we'll have an interview out with Jake Hager. And then Rewind Away tomorrow night. Number 73, King of the Ring 95. A classic tag match with Diesel and Bam Bam Bigelow against Sid and Tatanka. That's the main event.
Oh, man. Well, not to me. To me, it's the Kiss My Foot match between Jerry the King Lawler and Bret the Hitman Hart. I'm quite looking forward to that.
Yes. Bret Hart will cut a promo on sticking his foot into a man's mouth. So that is to come on Rewind Away Tuesday night. Thank you to everybody for joining us. We've got Rewind and Dynamite coming up Wednesday night. Lots of great shows. Go check out postwrestling.com. That is it. Goodbye.